I'm a correctional counselor at Thompson Federal Prison in Thompson, Illinois. The views I talk about today are my personal views, and they don't represent the views of my employers. I'll never forget the call, the one where you find out that you lost a brother, a co-worker, a family has just been shattered. I've been with the Federal Bureau of Prisons for 19 years, and in that time, I've lost 8 colleagues to suicide. 8, that's not a typo. That's a number that sits heavy on my chest and keeps me up at night. And every time it happens, I hear the saying from leaders and politicians: we care, but talk is cheap. We're tired of words that aren't backed up by action. We shouldn't have to learn about suicide from suicide itself. Working in corrections isn't what people on the outside imagine. The hours are brutal. Forced overtime is just part of what we deal with. We're reduced to numbers on a staffing sheet, and our families rarely see what the job does to us. They don't know what we carry home. The memory of 2 inmates fighting, the aftermath of inmates taking their own life, the verbal abuse, physical abuse. They don't see the nights we come home numb, or the morning we just sit in the car dreading what's behind the gates. People like to say it's just part of the job, but imagine being told sexual harassment and assault are routine, and there is little to no support for your mental health. If you admit you're struggling, if you even hint at suicidal thoughts, you risk at losing your job. So we keep it in. We drink too much. Our relationships, friendships fall apart. Here's a fact: correctional officers die by suicide more than police officers. Die by suicide 7 times more likely than the general public. But we're left out of the mental health initiatives for first responders in most cases. Most people have no idea how tough this job really is. Every day we see violence. I've been punched in the face, attacked, had human waste thrown on me, and not once during those times did anyone ever check on my mental health. I've always came back to work determined to prove I wasn't weak, but no one ever checked on me. Over time, you learn to block it out, and I hear from coworkers who feel like they have nowhere to turn. As a collective, we have failed. We have failed to address this issue. After a staff member dies by suicide, we all come together and say we'll do everything to prevent it, to make sure it never happens again. And 6 months later, and I'm being nice about the 6 months part, we simply just move on and nothing changes. A lot of people I personally see and talk to are just going through the motions. Recently, last month, I had a manager ask me how I was doing when passing me in the hallway. Before I could even respond, he had already walked by, and this is just an example of going through the motion. I want to talk about Blake Schwartz. He was an honor grad at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center and a member of the disturbance control team at Thompson. Blake died by suicide in March 2023. I made it my purpose not to just move on. Blake's wife, Michelle, was a nurse at Thompson. She told me she didn't know what resources were available, and Blake didn't either. That's why we work hand in hand with management. When resources are slim in today's world, we have to work together. We partnered with the Grave Matters Collective and Haley DeGrieve, who shared her own story. One that sounded a lot like what we go through in corrections. She showed us a picture at an event we had at Thompson, and she was happy, she was smiling. Little did we know that later that night, she tried taking her own life. That picture means a lot to me because that's what we go through in corrections. On the outside, we say we're okay, but a lot of us are fighting a war inside. We're able to fundraise $9,000 for the Grave Matters Collective, a local mental health group that provides resources. That money was used to host a blended training for correctional officers and the local community. During that training, I made it a point to attend. In a small group session, an older lady shared her story. A year ago, she tried taking her life. And she said she explained to her friends what was going on, and she just wanted her friends to ask her if she was going to hurt herself or take her own life, and they never did. Hearing how she just wanted someone to ask that, I realized I would have never asked that question, and I've been in those situations so many different times. And I was unprepared for the response, and this is why it's so important. We partnered with the Grave Matters Collective and the Fraternal Order Police Lodge 263. We put up 98 signs at every sally port and every exit at Thompson Prison. We sent 24 staff to assist training, so we'd have an army of mental health advocates. We put magnets with mental health resources at every officer station, every break room, and every office. We created a support group with licensed therapists. We've held roundtables with members of Congress to address this crisis. We even created a bill named after Blake Shores that's in Congress and will be introduced to the Senate during Police Week that addresses the safe harbor resources that staff can report and not risk losing their job, and provides real mental health resources for correctional officers. We're not going to rest until this bill is passed and real resources are provided. But I want to be clear, this fight has not been easy. There's been resistance. Some staff just say we just need to move on. Management has personally attacked me, saying what we're doing isn't making a difference, even blocking me last month from talking about it in training. I believe it's important to break the stigma. It's okay not to be okay. We need to talk about mental health. We have everything we need to make a difference. Let's see people for who they are, as they are. Let's talk about mental health as much as we talk about the weather. And understand that mental health is health, and it should be a priority. Let's ask people if they're okay on the regular. People do not commit suicide. Let me say that again. People do not commit suicide. People die by suicide. They die by loneliness. They die by depression. Your story's worth being told. And I want to end with a story that my friend, when she speaks, she says this all the time, and it hits home because it's kind of what the work that we do and why it's so important. The story's by Lori Ellis, and it's called The Starfish Thrower. And it's about an old man and a little girl. The little girl's on the beach. She's running up and down the beach. The old man walks closer to her and sees 100 starfish just laying on the beach, drying out, dying. And the little girl's throwing it back in the ocean. The old man goes up to her and says, "Little girl, you're not going to make a difference. There are so many. You just can't make a difference." The little girl picks up the starfish, throws it back in the ocean, and she says, "I made a difference to that one. I made a difference to that one." Just showing up for one person can save their world. This story means a lot to me in the work that we do. If we can save one life, we've made a difference. Thank you for your time.